Hello everybody, welcome to another video where I describe the ways in which to connect various adapters designed for console video game controllers to connect to your PC. Here I'm doing another video regarding the way that I connect Super Nintendo controllers to the PC. As I've mentioned in previous videos, this is a hack of a commercially produced multi-controller device for the Super Nintendo that allowed up to 5 players to connect to the Super Nintendo. You may have heard of this. There's one called the Super Multi-Tap by Hudson. This is a cheap one by Performance. Anyway, I have discussed what this is in other videos more so. So if you haven't seen my previous videos, you may want to see them first, but you could take a look at this video too. Anyhow, this device is one that I hacked myself, and very interestingly, I had mentioned the history regarding the wiring of this device. I'd mentioned something called SNES key, and I mentioned something called D-Pad Pro and PP Joy, and they all use for the Super Nintendo a 5-wire. Even though there's 7 pins on each of these, if you count, or yes, 7. There's three on this side and 3 on the left side, and well, left and right changes depending on which one. But the one with the circular end here has 3 pins. The one on the well, they both have circular. I should say there's 3 and 4 pins, 7. And each one has 7, but only 5 of these wires are actually used for the standard Super Nintendo controller. And on the schematic for SNES key, D-Pad Pro, and PPJ, they all assume that same 5-wire functionality. And interestingly, the Virtual Boy and the NES, the original 8-bit and Nintendo, both use similar 5-wire schematics. So I thought, well, couldn't it be possible with this device to actually connect a Nintendo controller to it? And I'll show you what I did. I developed or hacked this device here, which let me bring it into the camera a little better and zoom out a bit, move my camera back. And you can see here, let me see if I can zoom this. This is zoom. I'm just going to pull myself back a bit. So you can see this all in one shot here. This device has, at one end, a Super Nintendo male plug. And on the other end, has a NES, an 8-bit NES female plug. And in the middle here you'll see I have these two, these are actually DB9 connectors, and I just used these to connect the two pieces together. This piece I made out of a Super Nintendo male end, and I could have cut this off from a controller, I could have cut this off from even the end of this multi-tap, I could have cut it off from. I'm not sure exactly where I got this particular one from. These are not hard to get. Male ends or female ends are hard to find, and the NES female end I actually found. If you see here, it says newbie. This is an actual, I cut this off of a NES extension cord. So I cut this usually went from a female NES end to, it wouldn't go to this end, but it went to a male NES end. So the male end would plug into the Nintendo, this female end would be plugged into the controller and allowed it to have an extension. It would be an extension cord for the NES, made by the third-party newbie. So I got the female NES end that way. It's a very easy way to get a female NES end without actually ripping it out or hacking it off of the actual console. So it's a very nice device for that. And what this allows is I hooked the 5-wire. I didn't use all these pins. There's 9 pins in the DB9. I only used, I think I used these top 5, but it doesn't matter which ones. I just made it this way. I mean, I could have probably connected these wires other ways. This was the nicest way that I could do it. I'm not particularly great at wiring, so, and I'm still not. I really never pursued ways to wire too readily, too much in my life since I built this thing. I built this thing years ago. But what this allows is, it actually allows those 5 wires that I mentioned, and if you saw the schematic, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into the schematic a great deal, but to summarize what this thing does, it allows me to connect this end, this male Super Nintendo end, into my adapter. And plug a Nintendo controller here in. So it allows me to use this port instead of with a Super Nintendo controller, with a Nintendo controller. And I have here some Nintendo controllers that I'm going to be testing it on. Yes, I have the Zapper here too, just for fun. I'll be showing that last. This does not work as you may expect. In fact, maybe, like I said, there's only 5 wires here. Maybe it uses one of the other 2, the other 6 or 7. Why? I don't know how this thing could possibly work with a computer, but it doesn't even register the trigger, and you'll see that later. But the other controllers, so all these controllers, do work, and I'll be showing them one by one in this video. So I'm going to start with the classic, iconic Nintendo 8-bit controller that came with the system when originally released, and most of the revisions came with this controller. This is possibly the most famous controller in the world, at least in the United States, I would think. I'm not sure if it's the most famous. At least iconic controller. Maybe it isn't. Maybe some of the other newer controllers are actually more famous worldwide and more synonymous with video gaming, but I think for a lot of people in the US, this is the, when they think of classic game controller, this is what they see or picture in their mind, is this, the 8-bit NES D-pad controller. And I'm going to get its wire, or its end I should say, and I'm going to plug it into this female end. I'm going to put my camera down while I do that. Now you see that it is connected. So I have this Nintendo controller connected to this female end extension cord hack, which in turn connects to my adapter. Now I'll go to my computer. Again, I'm running Windows XP for those of you who haven't seen any of my videos before. And I'm going to go to the control panel, and I'm going to go to game controllers. And you could see here, let me just shut this. You could see here that there's these devices, LTP3, that stands for Parallel Port 3. Watch the other videos to find out more about how I connect this to the computer. And you see here Direct Pad Pro SNES key, SNES or NES Pad 1. Click on that. That corresponds to the port 2 on my Super 5 Play device, my hack. And now, if you see here, the buttons, a lot of the buttons are depressed. It shows them as if they were depressed. The axis is not moving, but I put the controller in my hand. Let me zoom out a little bit here, and see, up goes to up on the axis, down to down, left to left, right to right. I could swirl it all around, hit the diagonals. It hits the diagonals. It's not great for the diagonals. The NES controller never really was. Super Nintendo pad was an improvement on that. And you have the other buttons that are not depressed do correspond to these non-depressed buttons. So I push select, goes to 3. I think that selector's at start. I don't know. It's one of the buttons. You can see that maps to 3. This maps to 4. This maps to 6, and this maps to 2. So the buttons correspond just fine on the option menu here. The game controllers menu through the control panel on Windows. You can see this controller is functional. If you watch my other videos, you should realize that if I have gotten this far, that this means that I can use this controller on an emulator. And I'll be showing it on an emulator toward the end of this video. I'm going to go through right now and show you that each one of these controllers does work through Windows. And remember again, if this works in the control panel as I've showed you, well, not everyone. This does not work, as I've told you. The other 3 controllers do work, most notably this NES Advantage, which is a beautiful controller. And I've seen people on forums write and talk about how they can possibly get this controller to work on a PC. And a lot of them are talking about hacking it, cutting it up. You don't need to do any of that. You just need a device like this and a device like this. You could actually make a device like this just for Nintendo if you wanted, NES, that supports only NES controllers. And then you can actually make, if you wanted in turn, a reverse adapter like this, where if you wanted to use a Super Nintendo controller with the NES one, you could. You'd have to hack a Super Nintendo extension cord to make that. But it is possible to make it because it's all based on that 5-wire system. In fact, if I wanted to, I could, well, I don't know how I would do it, but if I knew plastics and such, I could probably make a device like this with an end, like 2 ends for Super Nintendo and 2 ends for NES if I wanted to. If I knew plastics and such. I mean, some of you do. Some of you make some really nice stuff on YouTube. You probably could do that. The wiring is really simple on this device. But this is a really, really versatile device. So I could make more of these kind of extension cords too, and put them in each port and have 4 NES controls at the same time. You know, I don't have one. I actually made another one of these devices for a friend and gave it to him, so he has my other one, the other one that I made. I can make another one. I don't have any more NES extension cords to make one, but I could, you know, you could buy them on eBay. I think they're cheap. They were cheap at the time. I'm guessing they're still cheap. I'm going to get now to this controller, the next pad by Nintendo. This is a superior pad. It's a great controller for the NES. It is definitely superior to the original. I don't care how iconic and nostalgic you have for this. This is a better pad. It's better grip, better shape, and the pad, like I said, the pad is just better. So this is like kind of like a little Super Nintendo controller. You know, it looks like the pad is much more like a Super Nintendo controller. The way the A and B are on a 45-degree angle, and the start and select buttons, the way they're shaped on as well, is just much more like the Super Nintendo controller, and really nice. Nicely made controller. If you can get one of these and you love Nintendo, use this. I mean, it's a better controller. So I'm going to connect this. I'm going to put my camera down while I do it. Alright, now I'll go to the control panel, and I'm going to be on the same, I'm on the same number here, port 2, so the same corresponding part on D-Pad Pro, or the game controller here with the, I should say the DirectPad Pro / SNES key, pad 1. That's what this corresponds to now. So I'm going to put it in my hand, and get some light on it, and you can see up goes to up, down goes to down, left goes to left, right goes to right. Start and select, you can see our, I think you can see them here. Map to 3 and 4, and B and A 6 and 2, just like before, just like the other controller. So this works just fine. This is now tested. I'm going to now connect. And by the way, like I said, I've been giving reviews on these controllers. I mean, like I said, this is a superior controller, I believe, to the NES pad. The original one. The original one is a great pad, great control. Of course, it's historically very important. It was the first pad made, I think. Well, Game & Watch, I think, had the first D-pad. I think that's where Nintendo first developed the D-pad. But Nintendo is the originator of the D-pad, so if you like D-pads, Nintendo is the originator of that, which is a great innovation and invention for video games. And the Nintendo controller, I think the Nintendo system and its corresponding Famicom in Japan were the first home video game system to come with a D-pad and set that new standard for video games, and which is still a standard. Video game controllers come now with D-pads. I think all the 3 systems have them. Unless Xbox does have one. Analog pads, of course, have also somewhat not really supplanted them, but come with the controllers as well, and are extremely important. Probably more important than the D-pad for most of the games nowadays. But the D-pad still is very much in vogue at the moment. So it has not been phased out. So I'm going to go to this controller now, just because it's more of a simple pad. I'll go to the Advantage next. This is a piece of garbage. It works, as you're going to see, but it is garbage. This is called the Quick Shot. Let's see who makes it. I don't know who makes it, just says Quick Shot. And it's garbage. This pad is terrible, very unresponsive, very stiff, flat pad. The controller has the A and B buttons, and they're not lined up nicely. I mean, the one's on top of the other, kind of thing. And you know, if you're using your right thumb, they're not even. Well, I guess it's maybe it's all right. I don't like the way these are lined up. And moreover, the way they push is terrible. They don't push down in the center and all the way down. The left side of them depresses while the right side remains up. See how I'm pushing them on their left side, and the right side remains higher up. Now watch, I'm going to try pushing them on their right side, and you see the left side's still going down, so I could push them here and they don't really go down there. Really a bad design. Moreover, the controllers, the start and select button, that are very unresponsive. They're both on like the same bar, as if this was something good. I mean, terrible design, they're sharing the same bar. And then it has here this auto fire, not rapid fire or turbo, though it might be rapid fire. I don't know if it's turbo or auto, as is sometimes distinguished. Auto meaning that if you put it on, the buttons, you don't even have to depress A or B, they simply move rapidly. I don't know, I'm going to check it, but it turns them on, both buttons, A and B, rather than only A or B, only B. So any platforming action kind of games where the jump button, usually you never want to be rapid, because if you put it on rapid fire, the jump, you won't be able to jump high and you'll die in holes. You won't be able to use this unless you like turning on and off the rapid fire functionality a lot. If you wanted to do that, then you can use the controller. If you didn't like that and wanted to set them separately, like most controllers worthy of some kind of respect, like the NES Advantage, that have individual turbos or rapid fires on each button, and actually have knobs. I mean, this controller is a really nice, very well made controller. I mean, it is very, very well made. But this is a piece of garbage. I mean, it's all or nothing with this. You either get A and B both with auto fire or rapid fire, whatever that is, or nothing. It also has this stupid feature, whereas this part comes off. This thing called the Whiz Master, maybe this is what this is called, I don't know, but this part comes off, and then you have this part of the controller here, and I guess you can, it's a little cartridge pack, you can plug this into another device, maybe by Quick Shot, I don't know. But this thing is just a piece of garbage. Stay away from it. I bought this with a bunch of games for maybe $20 many years ago, 15 years ago maybe. And it really wasn't. I mean, I got some bad games now. I got winter games in that lot as well. I got Double Dragon for NES, winter games, and other, I think, winter games, I mean, it's horrible. It's funny how bad that game is. But this is a piece of junk. So let me connect it. I'm going to put my camcorder down again and just connect it here and show you that it works. Connected it, and now I'm going to go here on the property screen again, and you can see up corresponds to up, excuse me, down to down, left to left, right to right. Start and select are corresponding to 3 and 4, A and B to 6 and 2. Now let's see about this auto fire option. I'm turning auto fire on, nothing changes, so I guess this is rapid fire rather than auto, in the sense that I have to hold the button down for it to act as if I was pressing the button rapidly. You can see 6 responding in rapid fire like manner, and A corresponding to 2 there in rapid like fire. So no, these aren't auto, but they are, I'd call them rapid fire, but it turns them both on. So you can either have both on or both off. This controller also doesn't have the so-called slow motion, which imitates the controller, the start button being pressed rapidly. So it doesn't have that, which is actually sometimes helpful on some old NES games. Let me now put the camera down again, and I'm going to connect that famous and very well regarded, and rightfully so, controller, the NES Advantage. I'm also going to roll up some of these other controllers, get their wires out of the way. Then I'm not going to demonstrate on games. Now the NES Advantage here, before I plug it in, it's an interesting controller because it has 2 different ports, or different plugs, 2 different male ends. You see, this is the one, the wire has 2 parts, one with a white strip on it, one without. And I think it's the white strip is considered player 1, but this was for games that are 2-player that involve the non-simultaneous play of 2 players. You might remember in Mario 1, for example, on the NES, Super Mario Brothers, that the 2 players did not play simultaneously, but you could play a 2-player game, whereby first one player gets to play, and then when that player dies, or maybe complete a level, I forget, then the second player has his or her turn to play, and that player would use a second controller. Well, instead of that, because this was an expensive controller at the time, you can actually use this. You can plug both these in and simply pass this controller back and forth to from you to your other person playing, your friend or relative, or maybe someone you don't like, I don't know, but whoever else is playing the video game with you can also use this same controller. So there's no need in buying 2 NES Advantages for games that are 1 player at a time, 2-player modes. Of course, a game like, say, Mario Brothers for NES, not Super Mario Brothers, or say another game with 2-player simultaneous function, Turtles 2, the arcade game, Turtles 3, Manhattan Project. Now, those are examples of games that have 2-player simultaneous play, and this would be no use for that at all. You would want this connected. If someone wanted to use this, that's fine, but somebody else would need to use another controller as well. And you could use two NES Advantages at the same time as well. You just plug in, I think it's this white wire. So I'm going to put this camera down while I plug it in. I believe the white striped wire corresponds to the first player. And if I got it wrong, I'll just switch them. There's only 2 possible choices. Now I've got that connected, and I'll grab my NES Advantage. And the NES Advantage is a harder one to show and the screen simultaneously because it's harder to hold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you on the controller and hold it in that position. So up, I'm holding up. Now I'll go to the computer, you'll see up in the axes. Go back to the NES Advantage, I'll hold down. You'll see down on the axes. Left, I'll hold. Left, you see? On the axes window, box, and I'll hold right. And you'll see right there. Now I'm going to swivel the controller around in 360-degree motion. And I mean, you see how responsive this thing is on the diagonals. I mean, I'm hitting the diagonals every time. I mean, it's very responsive, much more responsive than the original NES pad obviously is. So now, let me zoom out again, and I'm going to push and hold. I have the turbo functionality. Let me shut the turbo functionality off. You see here also with this turbo functionality, it's interesting, is that if it's, as you push B, this light is solid. If I have turbo on, it flashes to mimic, really it's the signal. Right now it's a solid signal. It's being fully pressed. This is like me, this would be like me going like this. So here you see me rapidly pushing A. Here's me holding A. You see the solid light, and here's this turbo function, the rapid fire functionality, or turbo as it's called here. And these switches actually decrease or increase